first question. When did you two first read Tolkien, and how do you feel about his work at that time?
I read Tolkien. I read Lord of the Rings first before I read The Hobbit. I read Lord of the Rings when I was about 17, and I thought it would. I thought it would make a great movie, and was waiting for somebody to make it.
Wow.
I read The Hobbit first. I read it probably around 10. My parents gave me the book, and they also gave me The Lord of the Rings, but it just sat on the bookshelf for a long time. And then I finally started reading it, and then I didn't stop reading it. So it was my favorite book.
Wow. I started reading about maybe 17 and 18 around. It's a great book. And I started using Ent as my online name ever since.
Right, your Ents.
That's good.
Ents are funny characters. They're great characters. Yeah.
So there are almost no female characters in The Hobbit. Were you trying to achieve gender balance in introducing Tauriel?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And also, we wanted to create, we wanted to be able to write dramatic structure between the elves. And so in the book, there really is the king of the elves, who's not even named in the Hobbit. He's given a name in the Lord of the Rings, Thandril, but in The Hobbit he doesn't have a name. He's just called the king, the elven king. So, but in order to create a drama with the elves, we have to have at least 3 characters. So Legolas was obvious because he's his son, even though he's not in the book. He is identified in the Lord of the Rings as being Thandril's son, and so we wanted to have a third elf, and we thought a female elf was an opportunity to actually for gender balance, but also. There are a lot of young girls that come to these films, teenage girls, and so who are they going to relate to? I mean, who you want to be able to have a character in there who's a role model for the young women that come to the film.
And also, Professor Tolkien can write great female characters, Eowyn, Galadriel. So we just figured he wrote great female characters. He just forgot to write one for The Hobbit.
He had other things on his mind.
Yeah, so we did it for him. Actually, Evangeline she is a fan, like you. She's a big fan of the book.
She sure is, big fan.
She did not want to do anything that didn't feel right. It had to feel right for Professor Tolkien's work. Otherwise, she didn't want to do it.
Yeah. And Smaug the Dragon become two-legged from the second movie and so on. Is it because biologically speaking, it doesn't make sense to have something with 6 limbs even for a dragon?
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true. It did. I mean, it is, to me, just thinking about because the dragon really wasn't properly designed in the first film. We were still working on the design, and so by the time we got to the second film, which is when we really see the dragon, it also felt much more like a predator. When you're walking on your wings like that, you feel much more creepy. Almost like a vampire, like a predatorial, like a bat, the way that bats walk,
And before he breathes fire, his chest would light up like a furnace or something. Why is that so? Do you have fire-breathing mechanism in mind?
Well, it just makes you think about what happens when a creature breathes fire. I mean, do they just open their mouth and it comes out, or do they have to they have to really summon it up? And we just thought, well, it's a great way to warn the audience that there's a fire coming. It's like we use it for suspense, so that when you see that chest glowing, oh my God, he's about to breathe fire, run. It gives you, it allows the audience sort of that sense of anticipation. It's sometimes a good, useful thing for a filmmaker to have that, be able to warn the audience that that happens.
It makes it more real too, not just magical, like you can just summon fire.
Yeah.
Makes it like organic.
He has to work up the heat to really get a good blast going. Yeah.
I think that feels really well with Tolkien's work. In his work where magic is not so much as like a magic D&D system, more like an innate ability of creation.
Magic is difficult when you're a filmmaker and you have characters that can do magic. It's what are the rules? If you have characters that can basically do anything when they feel like it, just because they're a magician, they can just do it. Then there is no real sense of suspense, or there's no sense of drama, because this guy can just do anything. So we've had to always be very careful, even with Gandalf, who is a wizard, of not giving him too much power too often. I mean, that he really, we can't just, you have to have rules that the audience can follow, so then they actually invest in the and the tension of the story.
Magic similar in Chinese mythology too, yes. That it's from nature, earth drawn from the elements as well, from wind, from water, from that whole sense of magic is,
It doesn't come out of thin air.
Yeah. It's not like a Disney film.
And so, also, being a kitty, how do you feel about killing the last member of a great species? Would you rather guys approve that?
Well, no, I know, he is a great species. Unfortunately, he's gone rogue and he's rather evil, so they have no choice, really. It's a shame, because I guess if Schmaug hadn't died, there might still be dragons today.
Yeah, he's a psychopath. Yeah, he was created by Malfoy. No, he's got to go.
He's got to go.
We did a favour.
He's got to go.
It's not like the Chinese dragons.
He's a murderer.
Okay.
Yeah.
My son, who is 5, he loves dragons, and when we were coming to China, he was excited because he thinks it's going to be a dragon here. So he's been looking for the dragon.
Okay. So many audiences are jokingly using video game logics to explain the movies. So do you play video games, or do they influence how you play the movie?
I don't think it influences me, because I hope it doesn't. I mean, look, hey, somebody might think it does. I don't know. I don't know. When I make a movie, you're telling a story. You've got characters. You're following the characters of the story. But yeah, I do occasionally play video games. I like Far Cry. I like Call of Duty sometimes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Okay, and how did you feel about it at that time?
I read him when I was seven years old, and it was read to me in school actually, and the teacher did brilliant voices. I remember her doing Gollum brilliantly, and so I went home and picked up the book and started reading it, and I kept reading the first chapter over and over and over, because I loved An Unexpected Party, I think it's called, when the dwarves arrive, and the idea of the next morning they were going to go out on an adventure, and it was all taking place at night, and I remember being fascinated with it.
Cool. So why do you want to play a dwarf in The Hobbit? I mean, you are not exactly short or something.
I never wanted to play a dwarf. I didn't ask to do it. They came to me and said, we'd like you to play this role, and I asked the same question. I was like, but I'm 6'2", and they're like, don't worry about that. We'll make you short. So, but yeah, it's the essence of the character that we were hunting for, and actually, he's a big character. He's big. He ain't small.
Yeah. So what's the most difficult part about playing a dwarf warrior king? Is it the height or the fighting part?
It's certainly the fighting, and he fights with a superior weapon that is a character of its own. Tolkien names his weapons; they become legends. So Orcrist is an extraordinary weapon, and it was a big, heavy blade. I mean, the blade is like this long, so once it started moving, it was hard to stop it. But I really enjoyed the fight style. I found it very kind of stylish, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Cool. So I once heard that Ian McKellen, when he's playing this green screen, and there are just 13 pictures around him, and he didn't act his part. And he said, "I didn't become an actor to do this. It's very hard for this." Is that rumor true? And do you feel bothered by this CG and green screen stuff?
There was one day where he was, in a very, very technical, difficult situation. But I think that was a bit of an experiment on Peter's behalf, and then, slowly throughout the shoot, we would work much more face to face, and he solved some of the technical things. But yeah, I actually really enjoy working in this sort of virtual world. I think it opens up the possibilities for extraordinary characters like Azog. I think is a great creation.
Oh. So when you were floating down the barrel and fighting the orcs in the second movie, we did some calculation and it seemed that it's really hard to balance in it because the center of mass is so high. So did you, when we actually at that part, did you find it hard to balance? Or?
In the water?
Yeah.
You know what? They created some unsinkable barrels that we worked in so many different places. We worked in a real river, and we also worked on a propulsion track which was filled with water, and it had V8 engines in it, so it moved very quickly like a fairground ride. So it wasn't difficult to replicate the movement of the water because we were in water, but the digital work that they did afterwards was phenomenal, and water is notoriously difficult to recreate in post-production, but I think they did an incredible job.
Huh. Cool. So, the story in the movie is much more than in the book. So where did you find the inspiration for all this actual part of performance? Do you draw some inspiration from other characters in similar situations, like Aragorn or Frodo with his wings?
No, not really. I mean, there is more there than you think. That he was written about in the appendices to Lord of the Rings, and he's mentioned in various other works. But I really stuck to what Tolkien had written about Thorin himself, and also what he'd written about the dwarven race in general. So I looked for all kinds of inspiration there. But there was plenty of material to use.
So the way the dwarf moves is very different from humans. So how do you manage it? How do you act that feeling?
We worked for about 8 weeks with a guy called Terry Notary, who was originally from Cirque du Soleil. And he gave us, we used weights around our waist and big heavy boots to try and drop the center of gravity, and we learned how to fight in a different way. Dwarves are very linear, so they move in a forward direction. They're not as mobile as elves, and so we practiced a lot with our weapons, and it was quite an intense boot camp.
So, which characters Tolkien's work do you most like? Would you most like to play if there's another movie?
I don't know which character I'd like to play, but one of my favourite characters that he created was Gollum. I think the Riddles in the Dark chapter from The Hobbit is one of the best chapters. I remember again reading that over and over again, trying to figure out the riddles. I think it's a piece of genius.
And so, in the third movie, Thorin has a radical change in his character. How did you deal with this sort of thing? Do you feel it's too radical? Or?
No, it was complicated and complex, and I really enjoyed the paradox of someone that was irrational, yet was himself at times. It was inconsistent, and he was paranoid and was descending into madness at the same time trying to lead an army out onto the battlefield. So to me, it was really interesting.
Cool. And so, did you enjoy the ride on the goat? And why did you choose to use goat and wild boars as riding?
Because it's exactly how Tolkien created dwarves. Dwarves ride to battle on. They're not horse lovers. They ride pigs and goats and rams, and anything that's not a horse is what a dwarf would choose. If you think about it, a ram is like a Harley Davidson to a dwarf. It's like getting on a really good motorbike. So I think that's quite appropriate for a dwarf.
Okay.
Nice to talk to you.